Scotland.
Thank you, Mr. Oliver. Can I start by also congratulating my honourable friend, the member for Folkestone, on obtaining this debate, I think on the second attempt since the rising of highs got in the way the last time. As he said, this is a debate that we held last year when there were a number of great concerns expressed. But of course, since that time, the situation facing freedom of journalists and their safety has deteriorated markedly. The World Press Freedom Day Global Conference for this year set its theme as Journalism Under Digital Siege. So, sadly, Mr. Oliver, since then, it is no longer under digital siege. Journalists, as my honourable friend stated at the beginning of the debate, are being killed simply by trying to do their job and displaying enormous courage in doing so. The good news is that last year I lamented the fact that that the United Kingdom was 33 on the list of countries for press freedom, and I said that we should be doing much better. I'm pleased that this year we have been ranked at number 24. To some extent, it is not because of a dramatic improvement in this country, although I believe there has been an improvement. It is more because of the disastrous deterioration in a large number of countries across the world. But I do want to highlight some of the things that we have done in this country. I was responsible for drawing up what was called the National Action Plan for the Safety of Journalists, something which has now been emulated in a number of countries across the world, where we talk to journalists, to the NUJ, to the Society of Editors, the NMA, we talk to the police, we talk to the prosecuting authorities, we talk to the campaigning organisations like Reporters Without Borders and Index on Censorship to try and draw up a strategy to improve the safety of journalists in the UK. And we also issued a call for evidence, which had 360 responses, which did show that a high proportion of those had encountered threats or violence or intimidation, and that 1 in 3 female journalists in the UK do not feel safe doing their job. So there is still clearly work to do. But measures are being taken. I entirely agree with the comments of my honourable friend about the online safety bill. I think it is an important measure, but we do need to make absolutely sure that legitimate journalistic content is protected within the bill, and I welcome the measures already taken, but I think more could be done. I also strongly welcome the measures that the government is considering to counter SLAPs, strategic lawsuits, which are used by rich oligarchs to try and suppress investigative journalism. And I also welcome the measures to establish the Digital Markets Unit, which, as my honourable friend rightly says, will seek to try and right the balance between the big tech platforms and the news organisations on whom they feed but give very little remuneration to. But the UK's record is, I think, generally good. I'm also proud that this country was one of the founders of the Media Freedom Coalition across the world, which now numbers 50 different countries who have signed up to the global pledge. I lead the UK delegation to the OSCE Parliamentary Assembly. We will be meeting for the annual conference in Birmingham next month, and I'm delighted that the motion that I've tabled on the safety of journalists will be debated at the OSCE Parliamentary Assembly. My honourable friend was right in saying that there are a large number of countries where journalism is quite a dangerous profession. In many cases, journalists have suffered intimidation, violence, imprisonment, or sometimes even death. But at this time, I, of course, want to concentrate on 2 countries in particular. The first is the Ukraine. In Ukraine, journalists are displaying incredible bravery. And as my honourable friend was quite right to name the 8 who have sadly already been killed during the course of their conflict. But it is not just since the Russian invasion that journalists have been under threat. I just wanted to highlight one organisation, Ukrainska Pravda, Ukrainian Truth, which was set up by 2 journalists in the year 2000. During that time, it has expanded. It has published, more recently, a leaked list of more than 100,000 names of Russian military personnel inside Ukraine, as well as inventories of oligarchs' yachts. It has fought corruption in that country. And I just wanted to put on record, the news organisation was founded by 2 people, Elena Pritula and Georgi Gongadze, to expose corruption. In September 2000, Gongadze disappeared. 2 months later, his beheaded body was discovered in farmland near Kiev. Pritula was urged to flee. She didn't. She carried on. She established a relationship with another journalist, Pavel Sheremet. In July 2016, he too was murdered, assassinated when her car exploded while he was driving. So journalists have been working in Ukraine against corruption, against the Russian influence for a number of years, and in doing so have too often paid the price for their lives. And the other country where media freedom has now almost been extinguished in its entirety is Russia itself. We do know through Justice for Journalists that there are something like 24 attacks on journalists in the last few years, 78 non-physical attacks, and of course Russia has now passed new laws which make it almost impossible for legitimate journalism to take place. It is now a crime even to describe what is happening in Ukraine as a war, and journalists are being imprisoned, and as a result independent journalism has been snuffed out, and the Russian people are denied the ability to access the truth, because at the same time Russia has closed down access to international social media sites like Facebook and Twitter, with the result that Russian people are dependent entirely on state-run, state-controlled media. And of course, most recently, Russia has retaliated against the work of independent journalists seeking to expose the truth of what is going on. And I'm sure that in the same way that members of this House, and I'm one of them, and I have no doubt that others in this debate are also on the list of parliamentarians who have been sanctioned by Russia and are no longer allowed to visit Russia, that of course has now been, that list has been extended to include 29 British journalists. And I have no doubt that Richard Sharp and Tim Davie and Clive Murray and Nick Robinson and Ola Guerin will be almost flattered to find that they are on that list, in the same way we almost regard it as a badge of honour, Mr. Hollowbone, to have been identified by Russia as people speaking out against the appalling abuses that are taking place both in that country and which they are inflicting on Ukraine. And it isn't just the BBC, it's Cathy Newman of Channel 4, it's Sophie Ridge of Sky, it's John Witherow, Chris Evans, Kath Viner. These are some of the most distinguished journalists in Britain, and they are all now banned, like ourselves, from visiting Russia. So I fear, Mr. Hollowbone, that media freedom is suffering very seriously across the world at this time, but no more so than it is in Russia and Ukraine. And the purpose of this debate is to cast a spotlight on that, and I hope that we will continue to do so each year as long as these abuses take place.
It's a pleasure to serve under your chairship, Mr. Hollowbone.